folks. I know you didn't think you'd see us again, or you thought you'd see us sooner, and it took a while, but things happen. But Happy New Year to all of you. We are back, and we are back with unfinished business, because we always have it. I am Jeff Gallashaw, your host, if you couldn't tell. And with me, as always, I have my co-host, Andre Joseph.
Hello and happy 2021, everyone.
Happy 2021. Hopefully it's better than 2020, or at least different and not indifferent. So, lots of stuff have happened, but, we have to keep it to a certain amount of time, so we'll talk about the stuff that has more happened recently. Like, Joss Whedon, again, is being thrown into the fire, and it seems rightfully so, and rightfully from the beginning, because he has been accused by Charisma Carpenter, who has said things in the past, more coded about how she felt mistreated by him. And now, even though she gives more detail to it, and it doesn't seem random because now she's got the backing or the acknowledgement from Amber Benson, who played Tara on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Sarah Michelle Gellar said something but didn't say something at the same time, whereas she says she will always love to be associated with Buffy Summers, but she doesn't want to be associated with Joss Whedon, which is, really big. And also Michelle Trachtenberg, where's she been, coming back and saying that she stands with Charisma Carpenter, and also felt it was a toxic environment and a lot of uncomfortable behavior on that set. And, I was ready. I'm never ready to cancel somebody, but, I was really starting to doubt Joss Whedon after Age of Ultron, really. But now it's like, wow. I'll admit, I am a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, but I think I'm going to have to take the road of Sarah Michelle Gellar, whereas I love the show and it means a lot to me. And it was a show I was a really big fan of, and I do own the DVDs. Remember that, folks? DVDs. Yes, I have those, and I have some merchandise, a t-shirt, maybe a poster here or there. But I'm not going to cancel him because I don't have the power to cancel him. But, I can also look upon these things with him and his work with a more jaundiced eye. I don't know. Were you a big Buffy fan, a big Joss Whedon fan?
Well, for me, I really didn't watch the show, to be quite honest. I only remember the Christy Swanson movie because it was on every day, the months after it came out in the theater. So that was, you could say, my de facto introduction to Joss Whedon. But for me, it was that first Avengers movie, which just, at the time, really blew me away that he figured out how to make it all come together. He had the best iteration of Hulk on the big screen, since they kind of fell short with the other movies. And, somebody like him who's a geek and a comic book fan, it was, kind of worshipped at the altar of Joss Whedon for a time until the Justice League fiasco, which has been very well documented all over the internet. That said, it's a shame and it's sad that this is the reality of who he is as a person and how he's mistreated his actors. It kept me thinking about, like, with Bryan Singer and the fact that he brought the X-Men to the screen and did a fantastic job. And I thought he was a pretty talented filmmaker. And then you hear about all the crazy stuff that he was doing behind the scenes, and it kind of built up over the years to where it's like, now I don't want anything to do with him. I'm hoping they erase that whole legacy of the X-Men movies, which, that's another story in itself. But the point being, it's like you have these geniuses that are pieces of shit in real life. So I'm glad to see guys like Sam Raimi and the Russo brothers get rewarded by taking on those bigger films and showing they can go the extra mile with their creative abilities, as opposed to these guys who had their moment, but pretty much the veil was lifted. So it's a shame, but it's not surprising to me.
Well, I do like that Charisma Carpenter also was decided to come forward because of how Ray Fisher is, kind of being a little villainized, for speaking out in the first place about Joss Whedon, how he felt Joss Whedon treated him, and just the production during the reshoots. And I mean, it was already telling when you already had people like Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot back him up, in that. But yet, it still seems like Ray Fisher is kind of paying the price, but that's probably also because he decided to, blame the head of a studio too. And it's like, maybe overstepped. I mean, I'm for you, standing up for yourself, but it's a studio head too. And it's like, he has friends. And then other studios are going to wonder, well, if I do something that you don't like, are you going to talk, are you going to go against me? And I'm signing your checks. So, I mean, I hope everything works out. I hope Ray Fisher, gets more work. I mean, I'll admit I haven't seen the Justice League movie still. So the Zack Snyderverse is going to be a revelation to me because I'll be like, I didn't see the other one. So I can compare and be like, maybe that one is better. We'll see. Also, in canceling this week, we come upon Gina Carano. I will admit, I haven't seen The Mandalorian season 2, so but I know that she was a pretty big character on that show, and I know she has a history of being a Trump supporter and Republican, and has made many tweets, and then she tweeted too much now because she posted an offensive tweet, quickly deleted it, but not quite fast enough because after months of fans wanting her fired off of The Mandalorian, Lucasfilm finally decided to actually fire her. And again, right now we don't know, what the future holds for that character, recasting, killed off, or just, hey, it was all a dream. But she will not be back. I mean, I will admit the only I'm sure I've seen her in more, but the only performances I can remember her being in is I remember the movie Haywire, the action movie by Steven Soderbergh, where she played the lead, and they infamously dubbed over her voice. And I remember she was in Deadpool, and she was one of the villains, the first Deadpool. And other than that, that is my only memories of her. I mean, she seemed like an okay actress, nothing to write home about. I know she used to be an MMA fighter, I believe, before this. So she did her own stunts, so that was impressive. But
It sounds like she just died.
I mean, I'm just saying, well, maybe her career did. But I'm sure somebody will hire, Ben Shapiro has his own production company making Republican action films. So she still has, for her sake. But, I mean, I don't want to be mean. I don't take glee in anything. I mean, if you write offensive things, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you got fired? I feel sorry for you. You did it to yourself. But, since I didn't see Mandalorian season 2, it's kind of a meh. Okay, next. I don't know. Were you a fan of hers or what the shows or her work?
I mean, she never really stood out to me as like this fantastic actress. I mean, she could do stunts really well. She had a physique. From my standpoint, with the Cara Dune character on The Mandalorian, it was one of those things. Well, no, I'm not going to spoil territory, but she was a character that I think grew very quickly to be a fan favorite amongst the Star Wars fans. And then, you had the politics going on behind the scenes with her and her beliefs. And, the firing, when I saw that, what she tweeted, and I'm not going to repeat what she said, but not only did it really cross the line in terms of like what's considered free speech, but, there comes a point where I think for some actors, you're trying to do the best work possible and you want to walk a fine line with what you believe in and then playing a character, and you're trying to, as a viewer, you want to separate the character from the person in real life. We know that certain actors in the MCU are conservative, but they're not like out there with their public views and saying all kinds of crazy stuff to get everybody in an uproar. There may be those out there, the social justice warriors, that want to like pinpoint that and they want to attack, but everybody has their right to an opinion. Look, I don't think every single Trump supporter is a racist, okay? But they believe what they believe for whatever reason. Sometimes it's a little nutty, but everybody has their right to believe what they want. But that said, I think that for her, in the position that she's in, you're working for Disney, right? So this is the same company that fired Roseanne after her tweet. They fired James Gunn for stuff he said years ago that he had totally apologized for, and then eventually, thank God, he got his job back. In her case, though, they tolerated it, and it got to a point where I think because of how politically charged this climate is right now, that she took it one step too far. And quite honestly, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with her losing her job in this way. And some of those same people that are like, now they want to cancel Disney Plus and are all upset, like, oh, how dare you, you silence her voice. Some of these people were the same people that didn't like her character the moment she debuted because they thought, oh, we're throwing in more inclusion, more females because they don't like Rey. And, there's hypocrisy on that side of it too that I don't like. But that said, they could do without the character. They could either recast or simply just phase her out, move on to another storyline, and then when they do the Rangers of the Republic, the Republic series, you get another lead. It's simple as that. But there's no like, what are we gonna do? We got this massive hole that we have to fill. You just make her disappear. That's it.
Well, see, interestingly enough, this reminds me of a few years ago, not politically charged, but when it was the lead actress off of the show Fresh Off the Boat, and she had just had that hit movie, Rich Crazy Asians, and was starring in Hustlers with Jennifer Lopez, and then she found out Fresh Off the Boat had gotten another season, and then she goes on Twitter and complains about it, like, oh, I'm gonna miss out on a great movie role because, oh, Fresh Off the Boat's come back for another season, kind of a slap in the face to fans, and, it proved to be the show's last season, and we haven't really seen her in any big movies since then. And I remember thinking at the time, I understand, hey, free speech, say whatever you want, but sometimes when it comes to tweets or Instagram things, especially as now beefs are forming on Instagram and Twitter, it's like, for some people, or especially celebrities, don't you have any friends you can talk to? Why are you putting everything on Front Street, especially when it comes to your career? Like, I can understand saying, hey, I love this opportunity, but not your like complaints where people are like, oh, oh man, my hit show's coming back. I'm gonna miss out on a movie. It's like, were you expecting sympathy here? What's going on there? So, that's like my opinion. But I will admit, I'll still keep reading them, like everybody else. So on to our next subject, which is heartbreaking, but also kind of, I'm trying to have faith through this. It's like, I don't know, you're a wrestling fan, 80s wrestling fan, right? Remember when Hulk Hogan would be like, yeah, well, okay, but you remember Hulk Hogan, right? I'm not showing my age. Remember when he was like the Rocky in wrestling. He'd get like beat down most of the match, but then, he started shaking that rope and, getting all this strength, and then he'd get up and come back and win the fight. That is how I'm feeling about the Coming to America 2 trailer, because I'll admit it wasn't a movie that needed to be made, but once I heard it was getting made and I started hearing casts, I was like, I'm a little excited. This could go either way. Then we got that first trailer and it was like, again, it could go either way. Now we got a little more in-depth trailer and it's like, it could go either way, but one side seems to be winning and it's not the side we all want to win. I mean, we get more in depth. Wesley Snipes looks hilarious in the movie. The special effects makeup, that needs work on lighting. And I'm like, these old guys still look the same age as. Yeah, and you can tell because I'm just like, ooh. And then, Arsenio Hall just looks like a horror movie villain when he's playing other characters. I mean, Leslie Jones. I mean, first of all, Tracy Morgan's just playing Tracy Morgan at this point. And then, also, I guess it just seems like flimsy excuse for a sequel. Like, I had sex with a woman before I met you. And it's just like, and then even in the trailer, some of the comedy just seems so like, is this supposed to be for kids and teens or something? Because like, I will kill you, and then all this like slapstick stuff. I mean, I'm happy to see the whole cast reunite. John Amos, obviously Eric LaSalle won't be in the sequel, but also they kind of, to me, also kind of handicapped themselves by making sure PG-13, not rated R. So it's just like, ooh, so that is how I feel. I mean, look, I'm going to watch it either way, but I'm trying to hold on to those ropes. I want it to win. But I'm scary. This could be like Norbit, it has that type of humor. Like, great cast.
I don't think it's gonna be like Norbit, but the thing that I feel is, I mean, first off, I'm a huge Eddie Murphy fan. Everybody knows that. And
yeah, same here.
And I've been happy to see him get that last second win before he decides he's going to call it quits with Dolomite and, going back on Saturday Night Live for the guest spot last Christmas or Christmas before last. And so, like, hearing about a Coming to America sequel, I kind of get that Black Panther was such a huge hit, so they feel like they have to sort of cash in and return to the classic that many people sort of reference as like the Black Panther of its day back in '88. But yeah, the trailers to me feel way too lightweight. I just don't understand what is going on with, just the plot. I get that they want to do this whole thing where, he has this hidden son and brings him back so he can become the king. And I think there's going to be a twist there that they kind of alluded to in there. But it feels like it's just the way that you remember seeing that Saturday Night Live bit with him, where he was like going back to all of his old characters and trying to modernize them. This feels like that because we're going back to the barbershop guys, we're going back to Randy Watson, and the only new character we see so far that we see is like Arsenio's character in Zamunda. Are we going to get the same jokes all over again? Are we going to suddenly like just get more of a lightweight kind of comedy that doesn't have the same kind of, I don't want to say grit, but just feeling like too much of a play? It's like Dumb and Dumber 2, where they try to downplay it for more of a family-friendly audience versus the first one, which was totally a Gen X film. It just, to me, I get that the original still holds up, and as a kid, I grew up on that movie and, bypassed the cursing and whatnot and jokes that went over my head back then versus being an adult. But this just feels like, who are you really aiming this for? Because I don't feel like it's for me. It feels like you're still in the bubble of your house thinking this is such a great idea, but you're not really getting what the audience wants. Are you going to try to say you're going to play it safe because we're too sensitive now? Like, no, be the old school Eddie Murphy. This is not it.
Well, maybe it's a thing of like, once you reach a certain age, you're like, I don't know what the kids like anymore, but I'm gonna try and like you said, I'm gonna try and modernize my character maybe for them, and then they'll hop on me, which Adam Sandler seems to have been doing for the last like 15 years, except not going back to the same characters, but characters like those. But it's sort of like in its own way, maybe his heart is in the right place, but it also feels like a cat. hey, again, he knows he has audience members like us who like love everything he's done in the past, not everything, but for the most part, and know he has a talent, and that's the problem. We know he's better than this, but yet he seems to like, okay, I'm gonna make a Dolomite, I'm gonna make this comeback, just like he did with Dreamgirls. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna show I can act in a dramatic role and still be funny, but then, but I'm gonna go run and do Norbit. It's sort of like I'm gonna run to my comfort zone after going out of my comfort zone for a hot 5 minutes, just to show people I could do it if I want to, but I'm gonna stay over here. And so, it's like
watered down Beverly Hills Cop 4. If they fuck that up, I'll be pissed.
I just want to tell Eddie, stop. Just like with this movie, stop going back to your old characters. Write new stuff. Find some like young hip writers. Stop. It's kind of like Bob Hope when he's like going to the same writers and want them to be modern, but they're the same age as him. It's like, no, you got to go old. You got to find some new writers to like update your material. Or I don't know. You have so many kids. Talk to them, because like, stop hanging with Arsenio. Exactly. Stop hanging with Arsenio and your same old buddies and being like, hey, this is funny. Because of course, Arsenio's like, he lives right next door. Of course, he's like, yeah, man, this is funny. And that's why watch how fast Arsenio's show got canceled. Why? Because he was still doing the same old stuff for modern audiences. And I don't know. Sorry, Arsenio, if that was harsh. I still like it. Okay. That's movie news for this week. This week, we're going to try something different. We're going to review 2 more modern films. And if we have time, talk about maybe stuff we've already recently seen. If not, you'll just have to wait till next time. So, first off, let's talk about both films are a little minorly scandalous, depending on who you talk to. But let's start off with the latest big movie from Denzel Washington, The Little Things, which stars Denzel Washington, Jared Leto, Academy Award winners, and Rami Malek, another Academy Award winner. This is a psychological thriller, takes place in 1990, which the soundtrack keeps reminding us, and the lack of modern technology and cell phones. And let's say this, the film's disappointing overall, especially considering the talent all involved. It is very slow, which is in its design because it's meant to be, like the title, meticulous. But I mean, the film has good points, but a lot of bad to middling points. I want to discuss the ending, but I don't want to spoil the movie. But it's open-ended, and it leaves the audience to decide certain aspects. So it's one of those movies where you could talk to 10 different people. They'll all have their own theories on the ending of the movie. I hate to say it. I've been critical of Jared Leto in the past, but I think he's actually good in the movie. And one of the reasons I kind of dig his performance is because he's the most alive person in the movie. Because everybody is so somber throughout. Rami Malek just looks like he just woke up through most of his scenes and then can barely raise his voice. Denzel Washington is looking like, he's going through business as usual, but trying to imbue his character with a little more depth. He doesn't have his scenes where he gets to yell too much. So, he's trying to do silent, meticulous. And, Jared Leto comes along and he's this breath of fresh air. In other words, I feel like he's not manic in the movie, but this is the kind of presence I think people wanted in his Joker performance more. That kind of know-it-all, but I'm just going to keep, this smile on my face and keep, pardon my French, fucking with you. And, because maybe I am the killer, maybe I'm not. Maybe it's you, maybe it's not me. Maybe I know more than I know, but I'm not telling. You do your job, That's how I came, that's how I felt the movie was. But I wouldn't recommend, but I'd be like, if you're a completist, go for it. But really, the only reason to watch this movie is because of the big names. But again, I feel like they were wasted in this. How did you feel about the little things?
Well, I went into it with an open mind. I know you had already told me that it wasn't very good, but it was one of those movies where I was watching with my mom, and here we are, like anything Denzel does is always an event for us. So we tried to first really get into the direction of the story. We were very invested in what went on in Denzel Washington's past. This whole deal with him on some case that went wrong and it screwed up his marriage. He had a heart attack and all this other stuff going on. And basically, you're thinking that the case he's on now has to have some kind of tie-in with him and something that he did. Maybe he might even be the one that is behind the actual killing. But the thing is, when you get to that third act and you're being kind of foreplayed by Jared Leto's character, something just happens where it's like they want to pull the rug under you, but instead it feels like a cheat. And rather than saying, well, we're trying to be ambiguous and, we want everybody to kind of like leave this movie, thinking about it after the fact, you're more scratching your head like, you could have done one more draft of this and maybe you would have had it more tightly bound. And instead, you just created more confusion for the audience. So it's one of those things where I think the writers thought that they were smarter than the viewers that were going to be watching it. And when you have that disconnect, it totally throws apart whatever your narrative is supposed to be. And personally for me, I could not get past Rami Malek's jawline. It works for Freddie Mercury, but watching him and him trying to like sometimes overact a little bit and that jawline of his kind of bulging, that got a little distracting for me, to be quite honest.
Well, see, I think it was all Rami Malek, but also because of that and his look, even though it would make no sense, it kind of makes you sometimes suspect that he might be the killer, even though there's no evidence that he could be. And like you said, I think they needed another draft because it felt like the writer, who's also the director, kind of was like, you know what? I'm going to make it ambiguous, but that's really because I can't even figure out who the killer is and support it. And so I'm just going to be like, who was it? If you say so, that's how it was. I don't want to say anything. But I also think that this is a film that needed an auteur director behind it. Because while it has style, while it has these little ingredients, and I just felt like it needed a director who had a vision, who could make something more of what we're watching. Because the director constantly tries to have shots that are like more stylish, like especially the multiple graves at the end being dug up and now has to be filled. Like, that is a great visual. But again, it really goes nowhere. And it feels like the director, John Lee Hancock, he has talent, but he doesn't have, he's more of a journeyman director. He's not an auteur. He's not really a visualist. He knows how to tell a story, but he doesn't know how to make those visuals kind of sing with the material. So like you said, there's always that disconnect. It's sort of like when you're hearing a tape, or like when you see a movie and the audio's just slightly off. You see the mouths moving and then the audio starts. That's how it felt like watching the movie. It's like it's never quite catching up to the way it should be. Now, something that's going to grip you and, make you pay attention. And funny enough, the casting in this movie is the thing that made me pay attention, because it's a bunch of actors I've seen in other things, given more meat of a role. You have Chris Bauer playing Denzel Washington's old partner. I remember him from many New York television shows and movies. You have Terry Kinney, who I haven't seen since Oz, playing, his old partner and now captain. You have, I'm trying to think of all the old, you have the kid from Free Willy. Huh?
The actress from Snowfall that plays Franklin Saint's mother.
Oh, see? Yes. Who is
the coroner.
Yeah, she played the coroner. I was gonna say the morgue attendant, but the coroner. And then you have the kid actor from Free Willy, Jace, I think it's Jason James Richter playing one of the deputies. You have Chip from Kate and Alley as one of the suspects. You know, it was just like, whoa, I'm seeing all these people, and I remember. And you know what? They all are better than Rami Malek in this movie. So,
see,
I'm like,
now I gotta watch the movie again just to see the kid from Free Willy because I didn't know that was him.
It'll be easy to recognize him. He still has that same look. He's only a little taller.
I just thought he retired.
Well, I think all of us thought he retired. But I mean, hey, apparently he's still working. But like I said, it's sort of like going back to this Coming to America 2 discussion, where it's like there's so much promise in this movie, but it's like they dropped the ball somewhere that it's like it didn't live up to what it could be. Especially when it's promoting, we've got 3 Oscar winners in this movie, and it's like they won't be winning this year. Maybe Jared Leto, a chance. And I hate the movie for making me like Jared Leto's performance. And, is there anything else you have to say about the little things?
No, I would give it another shot, but I don't think it's anything remarkable.
It's more a film you study just to make sure your theory is correct of what you think, not really out of like enjoyment. Okay, so that is the unfinished business review of The Little Things. Now we move on to something a little lighter, but just as kind of controversial. Not really controversial. It's an audience splitter. We go to the movie Malcolm and Marie, starring Zendaya and John David Washington, which is basically a black and white movie set on the premiere of John David Washington's director's film premiere, and they're coming back after, and they end up what is supposed to be a romantic night ends up into a grand argument fresh out of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but only with these 2 characters. And essentially they're the only 2 characters throughout the film. And that's pretty much the movie in a nutshell without giving anything away. But realistically, I wanted to like this movie because I'm a big Zendaya fan. But I found the movie, it tried a lot. It wore its influences on its sleeve. You can tell somewhat that the John David Washington character, even though a different race, is kind of, this is a personal film for the director, and that his character is more imbued with those qualities. And I mean, they said they referenced her age in the film. I didn't really notice the reference of the different ages, because I think, here's the thing, the actors are giving it their all. They believe in the material, but unfortunately, the material isn't that strong. We're watching a 90-minute couple fight. And we don't know anything really from before, except for the details they bring up in their different points of view, which, gives us evidence. But even during the whole argument, I never found myself on John David Washington's side. I was always on Zendaya's side. And then when you get to the end, it kind of has an ironic ending, where it's like, well, if you just would have said this 90 minutes ago, we wouldn't need it, but then there'd be no movie. This, I think, was something that would probably work more as a theater piece than a movie, and maybe it should have been tried as a theatrical piece and then made into a movie, because it needs stronger thing. And it's really hard to justify, for me, the movie and Zendaya's character, considering she looks so young, especially when in a scene she's talking about, why did the character have to be sexualized? But throughout the movie, Zendaya is in skimpy outfit after skimpy outfit, close up on love scenes and kissing. And considering, again, the age difference, it doesn't look romantic. It looks a little creepy. Now, I understand people have age differences in their relationship, but it was strange. And again, these characters are African American, the director is white, but yet he's throwing out this commentary about why can't I be looked at as a black director, or why can't I be looked at as a director instead of a black director? And, at times he keeps repeating this, how he wants to be, how inherently critics are racist or prejudiced or already against his work unless it's a sympathy narrative. And, that's refreshing, but unfortunately, it seems kind of odd or more of an observation coming from, a Caucasian writer director. And some of it, again, seems personal, especially when he seems to go on a tirade against a critic at Variety. So I don't know if in the past that critic criticized Sam Levinson, the writer-director's film previously, but it just seemed personal. And it's obviously a Cassavetes-esque film, but the difference is Cassavetes and his actors bring experience to their films and life experience. This film does not feel lived in. It does not feel like you have a film with people who have that sort of life experience. They have theories of what they think, and that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel real. That's the problem. It feels perfectly cinematic, which could work, but that's not how you're presenting it. At least that's my opinion. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too hard on it.
I'm with you on the story, and actually, I want to get back to that in a second. But I'll just say the things that I did like about the film.
Okay.
I like that it was shot, in celluloid black and white. The color,
Okay,
the white, the black, it had cinematography had a rich texture to it that I feel like I haven't seen in a long time, and I almost want to emulate that for a short film that I just wrote recently. I think performance-wise, it's John David Washington's best performance that I've seen so far. I think he brought more life to it, even if you might say he overacted the role compared to Tenet, and even compared to when he was on Ballers and even Black Klansman. I think he shows, okay, the guy's got some talent. If you give him the right kind of role, he can excel and not be always compared to his dad. But it's going to take time. He's still not there yet. I thought Zendaya was fine. I understand the criticism of her being, maybe too young, maybe too sexualized. But still, you got to hand it to her that for somebody her age to do a performance piece like that, she was very impressive. So I look beyond the looks part and just say, hey, the girl delivered. I mean, there were scenes she did that reminded me of like, she's got to have it. Like just if Spike Lee was directing her, it totally was like a throwback to that period of cinema for me.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, in terms of the direction, I saw the Cassavetes connection. I also saw the connections to not just Spike Lee, but also to Sidney Lumet and to Robert Altman when they've made like more experimental type of narratives with limited characters and limited setups. And so that was like another like throwback to do. And for Netflix, something that I think was welcomed without a doubt. Now, in terms of the story, I'm with you on that. I thought it was a little pretentious. I thought that John David Washington's character was a bit of a narcissist. Look, I'm a filmmaker myself, so there's something I can relate to, but a lot of it, I would say, well, I kind of have to have some disagreements with the way that they portrayed it. Not every filmmaker is that neurotic, if you ask me. But I do think the narrative would have worked better if they went back to that script and said, okay, let's keep those same two characters. Maybe keep Zendaya exactly as she is. But instead of making John David Washington, like this aspiring filmmaker, make him an actor. If you want to bring the life experience to it, let's bring out the fact that he's a second generation actor to one of the biggest stars in the world. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you live with the fact that you're in that man's shadow and that it kind of eats you up? Like, maybe it could have been he just had that big premiere for a Tenet type of movie and he gets those bad reviews coming in and it's all connected to his father and that he ain't shit. He ain't nothing like his Oscar-winning dad. I think if they did that angle, if they brought that kind of Cassavetes like realism to it, you would have had a much more interesting 90-minute film that I think would have left you hanging at every scene with the conversation, rather than let's just make up a bunch of characters based on what the filmmaker thinks black filmmakers feel and just over exaggerated. That's my take.
Well, I agree with your take. My thing is, I don't know, this might be the theme of the show. It has something, there's something there. It's not a, I'm not going to say it's a horrible film. You know, I'm like,
No.
it's one of the better films so far I've seen this year. It's just maybe personally, I had my hopes high for it, you know, because it was like John David Washington, Zendaya, two African Americans in a black and white romance film. So I had a lot of high hopes. And it just ended up to me, again, being interesting, but kind of meh. Like, don't get me wrong, Sam Levinson has talent. And I just felt like maybe this is a film maybe he should have made, let's say, in a few years after he's had maybe a bit more experience making films, writing, you know. It just felt, like you said, like how it would have been more interesting with John David Washington, like being more, maybe a little like his real life, being second generation. And especially when you have Sam Levinson, who's the son of Barry Levinson, second generation director himself, you know, I thought, you know, they could have both added to it. But, you know, with this, it was just more, it's an interesting concept. And I would say if somebody asked me, should they watch it, I would recommend it. But I'd be like, but it's not going to be perfect. And it's probably not what you think, you know. And like I said, I think.
Also,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, you know, the one thing I do commend the filmmakers for was that this was shot during the pandemic. So
yes.
having a film that is two characters in one space, and then I was reading an article about it today about how both actors basically had to do their own makeup. I think they supplied their own wardrobe, and there was no egos. They treated this like it was a straight up independent film on a low budget. So for that kind of picture to get on Netflix, I have to really like give kudos to that.
Well, I mean, Sam Levinson wrote the script, but he was collaborative with them. You know, if something felt false, they could always veto it or rewrite it. And also, everybody's a producer on this movie, so you know they all have like personal stakes in it. And like I said, one of the thing that shines through is I believe the performances are both great, and the cinematography is beautiful. But, you know, I just have to say, for me, I guess I was expecting more, but I would still recommend the film overall. And that is our review of Malcolm and Marie, written and directed by Sam Levinson. And so I believe we still have a little time. So what movies have you seen recently that you would like to talk about?
Well, I recently saw a documentary that was, I believe it's on Hulu. It's called Bit Wars.
Never heard of this one.
Well, this is more for, I guess you could say, for the video game community. It's a documentary about the bit wars in the late 80s and early 90s between Nintendo and Sega. It's mostly focused on the Sega Genesis and the way that Sega, you know, when they first came out with the Genesis, you had all these celebrity endorsements, Michael Jackson, Joe Montana, Tommy Lasorda had his own game, and pretty much anybody. And they just, you know, obviously went with a very aggressive advertising campaign because they were trying to say, okay, Nintendo was too much for little kids with Mario and Zelda. We have more, you know, teenage-oriented games. And then when Sonic the Hedgehog came about, that changed everything. And then, you know, when the Super Nintendo hit and they realized they had Nintendo right where they wanted them because they saw Super Mario World and they said, this is it? Like, this just looks like Super Mario Brothers 3. This is not anything great for a new system with more colors and better graphics. They knew Sonic would be like a pachinko machine, which I didn't realize the connection between the two till they mentioned it. And essentially they realized kids want games that have those kind of fast hyper graphics and a lot of movement. And then essentially you get into the downfall of Sega when the PlayStation came about. So it's really fascinating to see it from the behind the scenes perspective, like the people behind Sega, from, you know, the creators of Sonic to the marketing department and just the way that things were back then. Because I remember following those bit wars in like GamePro magazine and some of the others, and a number of the TV shows that were always covering like what was the hot new video game or new console that you had to buy. It's really like a nice trip down memory road for me.
Huh, okay, I would check that out because I remember.
And Seth Rogen's the producer of it, by the way.
Oh, that piques my interest. And I have to check it out because I remember all those bit wars. I'm not a big video game fan, but I did have a Nintendo and a Sega Genesis. I never made that jump to the PlayStation though. So, I'm trying to look at my notes here. Okay, there is a film I saw recently that I would heavily suggest. It's a movie called The Kid Detective, starring Adam Brody. I didn't expect much going into this because I knew it was a film about a guy who was a celebrated kid detective, and then he grew up and he still worked as a detective, but he's a drunk drug addict, and he never got over this one case of a missing girl that he could never solve. So when a teenage girl comes to him saying that her boyfriend has been murdered, this is like the biggest murder case or biggest case he's ever had to deal with. And he, of course, obviously doesn't have that confidence like he used to. So he's always second guessing himself. And, nobody's really willing to talk to him. And for the most part, he's dealing with teenagers, because most of his cases are like that. So now he's dealing with teenagers again. And, they consider him a loser, and adults don't respect him because they remember how great he used to be. And the film is an interesting neo-noir, modern neo-noir, and it's not as stylish as the movie Brick, but would make a great double feature. It's essentially a comedy, but it has a lot of dark, dramatic moments. And I mean, I've always been a fan of Adam Brody as an actor, so this really serves to his strengths. And it's surprisingly moving. I really didn't expect to be affected by this movie as much as I ended up being. And even though there's a lot of bad stuff and dirty stuff, it essentially feels like it could be something for a family to watch together, even though there is nudity and cursing and drugs, but it just didn't feel like tawdry or dirty as, the material. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Or maybe I'm just like, hey, I ain't got no kids. I watch this stuff all the time. It's nothing. But I really enjoyed the hell out of that movie. And I would definitely suggest anybody who can find it, definitely watch the movie. You're in for a surprise.
I think I've heard of this film, but I've never seen it.
And everybody I talk to about this movie is the same thing. I think I've heard of it, but I haven't quite seen it. I'll tell you the truth. It seems like something that would more be the thing of a really good hot novel that's coming out or bestseller. You think it's going to be just this simple one-note idea, and it ends up actually being like more than that. So I really enjoyed it and would definitely suggest it. Any other movies you've seen recently?
What did I see? Did we talk about Wonder Woman 84?
I don't think we've talked about it on the show.
Well, I'll be brief. I thought that it was very mediocre. I thought that the 80s setting was unnecessary. Pedro Pascal was very good. There were some action scenes I liked, like the one in Saudi Arabia, and the opening is pretty nice. But there's so many narrative issues with that movie, with the Cheetah character and the whole point of the story with, the wishing thing. I think that, honestly, this Christmas would have been better off if we got a Pineapple Express sequel.
I'll just say this about the movie. You gave it more credit than I would. I just felt the perfect sentence for this film: overindulgent. That's how I would explain Wonder Woman 1984, and not in a good, Batman Forever type of way either. But unfortunately, we have run out of time, so we're going to have to wrap it up. Sorry, I have no lighting in here, so it makes me look like I'm haunting this show. But this is the end of this week's Unfinished Business, but as always, we have plenty of unfinished business in the future. So, Andre, Do you have anything to plug this week?
No, I'm just still doing my thing. And as always, you could just follow me on Twitter and Instagram at AJEPYX. You could follow all my updates on my films at AJEpicsProductions.com.
Well, I would hope by now everybody knows where you can find me. But if not, you can find me at Projector One on, see, it's even hard for me to remember. Unfinished B1 on Instagram, my name on Facebook. Please tell me you guys know my name. But I do have something to plug really fast. I'm working on a show that is animated that is kind of coming out slowly. It is at _shady_bunch on Instagram, and I believe on Twitter it's the Shady Bunch 5, because there are other Shady Bunches. But you can see little snippets and animation previews and cartoons on that. Much more to come. I am a part of the project in different capacities, but I really hope you guys check it out, share it, like it. It's another side of me, where I'm not talking about movies for once. But also, as always, I have to say before we go, have you guys seen Buckaroo? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, what movie would you like to say about?
Have you seen Promising? Have you seen Promising Young Woman? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
I haven't, and I want to, but that's it for this week. I promise better lighting next week or next time we see you, because you never know. Life gets in the way. But I am pledging you guys goodbye, but we will be back again soon, and I promise. Famous last words. So that's it for this week.